Eleanor Harper stood in the glow of her coastal mansion's chandelier, her bare feet sinking into the plush cream rug as she cradled a glass of sparkling water, her other hand resting gently on the subtle curve of her pregnant belly. The Pacific Ocean murmured beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, its rhythm a quiet companion to her thoughts of the life she'd built with Julian Crane, her husband of 5 years, whose warm smile and whispered promises under moonlit skies had once felt like the foundation of her world. At 32, Eleanor was the heiress to Harper Realty, a family empire her grandfather had carved from nothing, now a sprawling network of luxury properties across California. Julian, with his sharp mind and effortless charm, had joined the company as a financial strategist, winning her heart with late-night talks about dreams bigger than the stars. Tonight, she'd returned early from a prenatal appointment, her heart buoyant with the ultrasound image of their daughter, eager to share the moment with him. The mansion was quiet, save for the faint clink of ice in Julian's study, where she assumed he was working late. Smiling, she moved toward the room, her silk robe brushing her ankles, imagining his face lighting up at the news. But as she neared the door, left ajar, his voice sliced through the stillness, low and venomous, unlike the tender tone she knew. "It's set for Saturday, Sophia. The boat trip. Just us. She won't suspect a thing." Eleanor froze, her breath catching like a stone in her throat. Sophia. The name stung. Sophia Lane, Julian's sleek, ambitious assistant, whose lingering glances Elena had dismissed as harmless. "The trust is airtight," Julian continued, pacing, his shadow flickering against the oak-paneled wall. "Once she's gone, the assets are mine. No one will question an accident at sea." The ultrasound photo slipped from Elena's fingers, fluttering to the floor like a fallen leaf. Her pulse roared, drowning out the ocean's whisper as his words carved into her heart. This wasn't a mistake or a misunderstanding. It was betrayal, cold and calculated, from the man who'd vowed to love her forever. Her knees trembled, but she didn't collapse. Instead, a fire sparked within her, born of the life growing inside her, the daughter who deserved a future. Eleanor pressed a hand to her belly, feeling a faint kick, and something shifted. Grief hardened into resolve. She wouldn't let Julian steal there tomorrow. Silently, she retreated, her bare feet soundless on the hardwood, moving like a ghost through the opulent halls she'd once called home. In her private office, she locked the door, her mind racing as she opened a hidden drawer. Inside was a file her mother had insisted she keep, a safeguard from years ago. Copies of the family trust, laced with clauses Julian didn't know existed. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory. "Never trust completely, Elena. Protect what's yours." She picked up her phone, her fingers steady despite the storm in her chest, and dialed Marcus Reed, a former security expert and her childhood friend, whose loyalty had never wavered. "Marcus, it's Elena," she whispered when he answered, her voice calm but urgent. "I need you. Julian's planning to kill me." The line crackled with his sharp intake of breath, but she pressed on, outlining the overheard plot, her words precise, her heart pounding with the weight of her daughter's future. Marcus didn't hesitate. "I'm on my way. Stay safe, Elena. We'll turn this on him." As she hung up, Elena glanced at the ultrasound photo she'd retrieved, now tucked beside the trust documents. Her daughter's tiny form, a blur of hope, anchored her. This wasn't just about survival. It was about justice, about ensuring Julian and Sophia paid for their treachery. The mansion, once a sanctuary of love, now felt like a gilded cage. But Eleanor was no prisoner. She was a Harper, and Harpers didn't break, they fought. Outside, the ocean roared as if echoing her resolve, promising a storm of her own making. Elena Harper sat in the dim glow of her private office, the only light coming from a small desk lamp that cast long shadows across the mahogany walls. Her hand steady, as she sifted through the yellowed pages of her mother's trust documents, each word a lifeline anchoring her to the fight ahead. The mansion's silence pressed against her, broken only by the distant crash of waves and the faint ticking of a grandfather clock in the hall, a reminder that time was both her ally and her enemy. Julian's voice still echoed in her mind, his cold, calculated plot to kill her on their weekend boat trip, twisting like a knife in her chest. but the pain fueled her focus, sharpening her resolve to protect her unborn daughter. Marcus Reed had promised to arrive within the hour, his gruff voice over the phone a steady reassurance. But until then, Eleanor was alone, orchestrating the first moves of a game Julian didn't know he was playing. She traced a clause in the trust with her finger, her mother's foresight glowing like a beacon. In cases of foul play, all Harper Realty assets would revert to Elena or her heirs, nullifying any transfer Julian believed he'd secured. He thought her naive, a trusting wife blinded by love. But Elena had always been more. Her grandfather's tenacity ran in her veins, tempered by her mother's wisdom. She pulled out a notepad, her pen moving swiftly as she sketched a plan. Fake her death, gather evidence, and expose Julian and Sophia before they could claim her empire. Her phone buzzed, a text from Marcus. 10 minutes out, back gate. And she exhaled, the knot in her chest loosening slightly. She slipped the trust documents into a hidden safe, then moved to her laptop, accessing the mansion's security system to disable the cameras near the back entrance, ensuring Marcus's arrival went unseen. The betrayal still burned, memories of Julian's tender kisses now tainted by the image of him pacing in his study, plotting with Sophia, whose sultry laugh Elena had once ignored at company galas. She closed her eyes, her hand resting on her belly, feeling a flutter from her daughter, and whispered, "We're stronger than this, little one. I'll keep you safe." The promise steadied her, transforming her heartbreak into a mother's fierce determination. Marcus arrived, his broad frame filling the office doorway, his dark eyes scanning her with concern before softening into resolve. "Tell me everything," he said, pulling a chair close, his presence a fortress against the chaos threatening to engulf her. Eleanor recounted Julian's words, her voice steady despite the ache in her heart, detailing the boat trip, Sophia's role, and the trust's hidden clauses. Marcus listened, his jaw tightening, then nodded. "We'll stage it perfectly. You go on that boat, but you come back alive. I'll have a team ready to pull you out of the water. We'll need evidence, recordings, financial trails, anything. To nail them." Elena agreed, her mind already mapping the logistics. A life vest hidden under her dress, a waterproof tracker, and a burner phone to coordinate with Marcus. She thought of her daughter's ultrasound, tucked in her pocket, a talisman of hope. "Julian thinks he's won," she said, her voice low, "but he's about to learn what happens when you underestimate a Harper." Marcus's lips twitched into a grim smile. "Let's give him the performance of his life, then tear his world apart." They spent the next hour refining the plan, Marcus suggesting a rendezvous point a mile from the boat's path where a speedboat would wait, cloaked by darkness. Eleanor would play her part, loving wife, unsuspecting victim, until the moment Julian pushed her, then vanish into the sea, leaving him to believe his plan had succeeded. The risk was immense, but so was her resolve. She thought of her grandfather, who'd built Harper Realty from a single lot, and her mother, who'd taught her to wield power with grace and steel. This was her legacy, her daughter's birthright, and she'd be damned if Julian stole it. As Marcus left to prepare, Eleanor stood at her office window, staring at the ocean's dark expanse, its waves a mirror to the storm brewing within her. She imagined Julian's smug satisfaction, Sophia's greedy hands on her family's jewels, and felt a surge of defiance. This wasn't just about survival. It was about reclaiming her life, her daughter's future, and the empire her family had bled for. She turned back to her desk, pulling up Julian's recent emails, searching for any trace of his dealings with Sophia. A cryptic message caught her eye, sent to an offshore account. "Funds ready post-Saturday, clear the path." Her blood ran cold, but she saved the email, forwarding it to Marcus. Every piece of evidence was a brick in the wall she'd built to trap them. The clock struck midnight and Elena straightened, her heart heavy but unyielding. She wasn't the woman Julian had married, soft and trusting. She was a mother, a fighter, a Harper. The boat trip loomed, 2 days away, and with it, the first act of her counterstrike. She'd walk onto that boat as prey, but she'd emerge as the predator, ready to dismantle the life Julian thought he'd won. The ocean outside whispered her name, and Elena answered with a silent vow. For her daughter, for her family, she'd rise again. The night air was thick with salt and secrets as Elena Harper stepped onto the deck of their sleek yacht, Aurora's Promise, her navy chiffon dress fluttering against her legs, concealing the life vest strapped tightly beneath, a silent shield. For her and her unborn daughter. Julian Crane, her husband, stood at the helm, his tailored blazer catching the moonlight, his smile practiced and warm as he extended a hand to help her aboard. But Eleanor saw the predator in his eyes, the same cold glint she'd heard in his voice plotting her murder with Sophia Lane. The Pacific stretched endlessly around them, its dark waves lapping at the hull, a restless witness to the betrayal unfolding. Eleanor's heart thudded, not from fear, but from the fire of her resolve, her every step calculated as she played the role of the unsuspecting wife, her fingers brushing Julian's as she accepted a glass of champagne she had no intention of drinking. "To us," Julian toasted, his voice smooth, his gaze lingering on her as if testing her trust, and Elena smiled, her lips curving with a sweetness that masked the storm within. She leaned against the railing, gazing at the star-flecked horizon, her thoughts on Marcus Reed, waiting a mile away in a speedboat, ready to pull her from the water once Julian made his move. The yacht rocked gently, its rhythm a cruel echo of the nights they'd spent here, dreaming of a future now shattered by his greed. "You're quiet tonight," Julian said, stepping closer, his hand grazing her waist, and Elena tilted her head, her voice soft but deliberate. "Just thinking about how quickly life can change." His eyes narrowed, a flicker of suspicion, but he laughed it off, pouring more champagne, his fingers brushing hers with a possessiveness that made her skin crawl. Beneath her dress, the life vest pressed against her ribs, a reminder of her plan. Survive, disappear, and strike back. She thought of her daughter, the faint kick she'd felt that morning, and her resolve hardened. This was for her, for the legacy her grandfather had built, for the love Julian had defiled. The crew had been dismissed, leaving them alone, just as Julian had planned, and Elena's pulse quickened as the moment approached. "Do you trust me, Elena?" he asked, his voice low, almost tender, and she met his gaze, her expression unreadable, her heart a fortress. "Always," she lied, her voice steady, and in that instant his mask slipped, his hands moving with ruthless precision. He shoved her hard, his palms slamming into her chest, and time slowed as she stumbled backward, the railing giving way to empty air. The cold ocean rushed up to meet her, swallowing her with a splash that echoed in the night, and beneath the surface Elena's world went silent, the water a cocoon of clarity. She stayed calm, her life vest buoying her as she counted the seconds, her lungs burning but her mind sharp. Above, Julian's footsteps pounded, his voice cursing, "Elena, where are you?" But she remained submerged, kicking toward the rendezvous point, her movements deliberate, guided by the waterproof tracker pinned to her vest. 30 seconds, 60, and then she surfaced briefly, gasping, spotting the faint outline of Marcus's speedboat in the distance. Strong arms hauled her aboard, Marcus's voice a low anchor. "You're safe." And she nodded, shivering but unbroken, her wet dress clinging to her as she glanced back at the yacht, its silhouette fading into the dark. "Let him think he's won," she whispered, her voice steel-edged, her eyes burning with the promise of retribution. The speedboat cut through the waves, carrying her to a hidden cove where a car waited to whisk her to a safe house, a modest cabin nestled in the cliffs, far from Julian's reach. Inside, Marcus handed her a towel and a burner phone, his face etched with concern, but also pride. "You did it, Elena. Phase 1 complete." She dried her hands, her fingers trembling, not from cold, but from the adrenaline of survival, and checked the phone for updates. A text from a trusted contact confirmed Julian had returned to shore, already spinning a tale of tragedy to the Coast Guard, his voice breaking with feigned grief. Elena's lips pressed into a thin line. She knew his tears were for the cameras, not for her. She thought of Sophia, likely waiting in the mansion, slipping into Eleanor's silk robes, her greed blinding her to the noose tightening around them both. The safe house was sparse, its wooden walls lined with maps and monitors, a command center for the war Elena was waging. She sat at a small table, pulling the ultrasound photo from a waterproof pouch, its edges damp but intact, and traced her daughter's form with a finger. "We're alive," she murmured, her voice cracking for the first time, the weight of the night crashing over her. But tears didn't fall. Instead, she straightened, her grief alchemizing into purpose. Marcus set up a laptop, pulling up feeds from the mansion's hidden cameras, showing Julian pacing in his study, his face pale, his hands shaking as he poured a whiskey. "He's rattled," Marcus noted, and Elena nodded, her mind already on the next move, gathering evidence of Julian's financial schemes and Sophia's complicity, enough to bury them when she returned. The ocean's roar filtered through the cabin's open window, a reminder of the abyss she'd escaped, and Elena felt a surge of power. She wasn't the woman Julian had pushed into the sea. She was a mother, a survivor, a harper, and she'd make him pay for every lie. The night stretched on, and as Marcus planned the surveillance, Eleanor stared at the ultrasound, her daughter's heartbeat a drumbeat of hope. She'd walked onto that yacht as prey, but she'd emerged as the architect of Julian's downfall, ready to dismantle his empire with the same precision he'd used to betray her. The world mourned Elena Harper in a cascade of headlines that painted her as a tragic heiress lost to the sea. Her name splashed across front pages and social media with hashtags of grief, while Julian Crane played the grieving widower with chilling perfection. His tear-streaked face captured at a press conference, his voice breaking as he spoke of his unimaginable loss. In the coastal mansion that had once been Elena's sanctuary, Sophia Lane strutted through the halls, draping herself in Elena's silk scarves and diamond earrings, her laughter echoing where warmth had once lived, as if she could erase Elena's presence by claiming her possessions. From a cliffside safehouse, Elena watched it all through grainy surveillance feeds, her jaw tight, her green eyes burning with a resolve that outshone the pain of betrayal, her hand resting on her pregnant belly where her daughter kicked, a reminder of why she fought. The monitors flickered, showing Julian in his study signing documents to transfer Harper Realty assets, his signature bold and reckless, unaware of the trust's hidden clauses that would undo him. Sophia lounged on Elena's velvet chaise, sipping wine from a crystal glass etched with the Harper crest, her arrogance a stark contrast to the staff's silent resentment, their furtive glances caught on camera as they whispered of their loyalty to Elena. Tucked away in the safe house, a sparse cabin with wooden walls and a single window framing the restless ocean, Elena worked tirelessly with Marcus Reed, her childhood friend and security expert, whose steady presence grounded her as they built a case against her betrayers. She sifted through Julian's emails, uncovering a trail of offshore accounts and falsified contracts, each discovery a brick in the wall of evidence she'd use to reclaim her empire. Marcus hacked into Sophia's phone, revealing texts that confirmed her role in the plot, her words dripping with greed. "Once it's ours, we'll sell the coastal properties first." Helena's heart ached, not for Julian's love, which she now saw as a mirage, but for the life she'd imagined for her daughter, a life she'd nearly lost to their treachery. Yet as she watched Sophia twirl Eleanor's mother's pearl necklace around her finger, Elena's grief hardened into a blade, sharp and unyielding. She thought of her grandfather, who'd built Harper Realty with calloused hands, and her mother, whose foresight had armed her with the trust's safeguards and felt their strength flow through her. At Elena's supposed memorial, a lavish affair orchestrated by Julian at the mansion, she slipped in disguised as a mourner, her face veiled in black, her posture poised but unassuming, blending into the crowd of elites and reporters. Julian stood at a podium, his eulogy a masterclass in manipulation, his voice cracking as he spoke of Elena's light, while Sophia hovered nearby, her black dress a mockery of grief, the stolen pearl necklace glinting at her throat. Elena's chest tightened, but she remained still, her eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses, cataloguing every lie. A loyal butler, Thomas, who'd served her family for decades, paused beside her, his weathered hand brushing hers in a silent pledge of allegiance, his whispered, "You're not forgotten, Miss Elena," warming her like a hearth in winter. She nodded faintly, her resolve bolstered by the loyalty Julian couldn't buy. Back at the safe house, Elena and Marcus analyzed footage from the memorial. Noting Julian's nervous glances and Sophia's forced tears, cracks in their facade that Elena would widen. She sent an anonymous email to a trusted board member, Clara Vaughan, a protégée of her mother's, planting seeds of doubt about Julian's rapid asset transfers. Clara's reply was cautious but promising. "I'll dig deeper. Something's off." Elena's lips curved into a grim smile, her fingers hovering over the keyboard as she uploaded more evidence to a secure drive. Bank records, travel logs, and a recorded call where Julian discussed clearing the path with Sophia. Each piece was a step toward justice, a promise to her daughter that their legacy would endure. The safe house's single lamp cast a soft glow on the ultrasound photo pinned to a corkboard, her daughter's tiny form a beacon of hope amidst the queue. War she waged. Eleanor touched the photo, whispering, "We're coming home, little one," her voice thick with emotion but steady with purpose. Outside, the ocean roared, its waves a chorus to her defiance, urging her to press on. Marcus, leaning against the cabin's wall, watched her with quiet admiration, his voice low as he said, "They're getting sloppy, Elena. Julian's pushing the board to vote him CEO next week. He thinks he's untouchable." Elena nodded, her eyes never leaving the monitor where Julian toasted with investors, his charm masking his desperation. "Let him," she said, her tone cold but resolute. "The higher he climbs, the harder he'll fall." She thought of the trusts. Clause 19, which voided any transfer in cases of foul play, a secret weapon Julian hadn't anticipated. As the night deepened, Elena reviewed the memorial footage again, pausing on Sophia's smug smile, the way she adjusted the stolen necklace with a flourish. The image fueled her, not with anger, but with clarity. This wasn't just about reclaiming her company, but about restoring the honor of her family's name, about ensuring her daughter grew up in a world where betrayal didn't win. She stood, stretching her aching back, her pregnancy a quiet strength, and moved to the window, staring at the sea that had nearly claimed her. The horizon glowed faintly, a promise of dawn, and Elena felt a surge of power. She wasn't the woman Julian had pushed into the water. She was a mother, a survivor, a harper, and she'd returned to burn their lies to ash. The safe house hummed with purpose, its sparse walls a canvas for her strategy, and as Marcus plotted their next move, Elena's heart beat with the rhythm of justice, each pulse a vow to her daughter, her family, herself. She'd let the world mourn a little longer, let Julian and Sophia revel in their stolen glory, but soon she'd step from the shadows, her evidence a storm to sweep them away. Elena Harper's safe house buzzed with quiet intensity, the flicker of surveillance monitors, casting shadows across the wooden walls as she and Marcus Reed watched Julian Crane and Sophia Lane unravel under the weight of her carefully planted seeds, their smug confidence eroding with each anonymous strike she delivered, her pregnant belly a grounding force as she orchestrated their downfall. The ocean's distant roar filtered through the cabin's open window, a reminder of the night she'd survived Julian's push into the sea. And now, as she sat at a cluttered desk, her fingers danced across a laptop, sending a chilling message. To Sophia's personal email, a grainy photo of her and Julian on the yacht, laughing under string lights the night of Elena's death, with the caption, "Truth sinks slower than you think." On the monitor, Sophia's face paled as she opened the email in the mansion's opulent living room, her wineglass trembling in her hand before she thrust the laptop toward Julian, who stormed across the room, his voice a muffled growl through the audio feed. "Who the hell is doing this?" Elena's lips curved into a steely smile, her green eyes reflecting the screen's glow, her heart steady despite the ache of betrayal that lingered like a bruise. She thought of her daughter, the ultrasound photo pinned above the desk, its tiny form a beacon of hope, and whispered, "We're close, little one." Her voice soft but fierce, a mother's vow to reclaim their future. Marcus leaned against the wall, his arms crossed, his sharp gaze flicking between the footage and Elena's composed figure, noting the fire in her that hadn't dimmed since the night she'd emerged from the water. "They're cracking," he said, his tone laced with grim satisfaction, and Elena nodded, her mind already on the next move. A handwritten note slipped into Julian's briefcase by a loyal staff member, reading, Guilt burns brighter than lies. The note, delivered that morning, had sent Julian into a frenzy. The cameras capturing him tearing through his study, shredding papers, his paranoia a stark contrast to the polished CEO he'd played for the board. Eleanor's strategy was surgical, each message designed to sow doubt, to make them question every shadow, every glance, until their alliance frayed. She'd uncovered more evidence: bank transfers to Sophia disguised as consulting fees, a forged signature on a trust amendment, and a hotel receipt placing them together months before the yacht incident, each piece a thread in the tapestry of their betrayal, meticulously catalogued for the board. Clara Vaughan, the board member loyal to Elena's mother, had begun discreet inquiries, her emails to Elena encrypted and cautious, promising to stall Julian's CEO vote. Elena's heart swelled with gratitude for Clara's loyalty, a reminder that not all had abandoned her, and she thought of Thomas, the butler, whose silent support at the memorial had anchored her. The safe house, though sparse, felt alive with purpose, its walls lined with maps and timelines, a war room where Elena transformed her pain into power. She stood, stretching her aching back, her pregnancy a quiet strength, and moved to the monitor showing Sophia in Elena's former bedroom, trying on a sapphire bracelet that had belonged to Elena's grandmother. The sight stung, but Elena channeled the hurt into resolve, her fingers tightening around the ultrasound photo she'd slipped into her pocket. "She's wearing my past," Elena said, her voice low. "But she won't touch my future." Marcus nodded, pulling up a new feed of Julian meeting with investors, his charm strained, his eyes darting as if expecting an ambush. "He's pushing for the vote tomorrow," Marcus noted, and Elena's gaze hardened. "Then we tighten the noose," she replied, her tone cold but resolute, her mind racing through the trust's Clause 19, which would strip Julian of control if foul play was proven. She sent another email to Clara, attaching a scanned document exposing Julian's offshore accounts, and received a reply within minutes. "This changes everything. I'll call an emergency review." The words were a spark, igniting Eleanor's hope, but she tempered it with caution. Julian was desperate, and desperate men were dangerous. She thought of her grandfather, who'd faced down rivals with nothing but grit, and her mother, whose foresight had given her this chance, their legacy a fire in her veins. As night fell, the safe house grew quiet, the ocean's rhythm a steady pulse, and Elena sat alone reviewing footage of Sophia pacing the mansion's balcony, her phone pressed to her ear, her voice sharp as she argued with Julian. "You said it was foolproof." Sophia snapped, the audio crackling, and Elena's lips twitched, a ghost of a smile, knowing their trust was fracturing. She imagined Sophia's sleepless nights, Julian's frantic searches for the source of the leaks, and felt a surge of power. Not vengeance, but justice. A mother's fight for her child's birthright. Marcus returned with coffee, his eyes heavy but alert, and they planned the final blow, a public reveal at the board meeting, where Eleanor would walk in alive with evidence to bury them. The risk was immense, but so was her resolve. Her daughter's kicks a drumbeat of courage. Eleanor stood at the window staring at the sea that had nearly claimed her, its waves glinting under the moon, and felt her strength solidify. She wasn't the woman Julian had betrayed. She was a harper, a survivor, a mother, and she'd make them pay for every stolen moment. The safe house hummed with anticipation, its sparse walls a testament to her focus, and as Marcus mapped out security for her return, Elena touched her belly, her heart swelling with love for the daughter who'd given her purpose. She'd let Julian and Sophia revel in their illusion of victory, but tomorrow she'd shatter it, her evidence a storm, to sweep them away, her return a beacon of resilience for the empire she'd reclaim. The glass fortress of Harper Realty's headquarters loomed over the California coastline, its towering windows refracting dawn's light into prisms that danced across the marble lobby. But inside the 40th floor boardroom, a storm brewed as Eleanor Harper prepared to reclaim her empire, her heart pounding with the weight of her unborn daughter's future and the justice she'd meticulously planned. Dressed in a tailored black suit that hugged her pregnant frame, her hair swept into a sleek chignon, she stood in a discreet office across town, adjusting silver cufflinks engraved with her initials, her reflection in the mirror radiating a quiet ferocity that belied the betrayal she'd survived. Marcus Reed, her loyal ally, stood nearby, his arms crossed, his sharp eyes scanning her with a mix of concern and pride as he asked, "Ready?" Elena slipped a flash drive loaded with damning evidence into her pocket, her voice steady as steel. "More than ready. Let's finish this." Across the city, Julian Crane stood at the head of the boardroom table, his tailored suit pristine, his voice smooth as he pitched his permanent CEO role, but the faint tremor in his hands betrayed the paranoia gnawing at him since Elena's cryptic messages, a photo, a note, an email exposing his crimes with Sophia Lane. The board members, a mix of seasoned executives and cautious allies, listened intently, their faces unreadable, while Clara Vaughan, loyal to Eleanor's mother, steepled her fingers, her sharp gaze cutting through Julian's charm. Sophia sat at the table's end, her silk dress a facade of elegance, her foot tapping nervously, her clutch hiding the latest anonymous note, "Some ghosts return." Julian's speech peaked, his words bold. "I ask this board to confirm my leadership as Elena would have wanted." But before the vote could begin, the door clicked open, and Elena stepped into the room, her presence a thunderclap that silenced every breath. Her heels clicked softly on the marble, each step deliberate, her pregnancy visible beneath her suit, a testament to her survival and strength. Julian's face drained of color, his lips forming her name in a choked whisper. "Elena." As Sophia gasped, her hand clutching the table, her stolen sapphire bracelet glinting like a guilty confession. The board froze, chairs creaking, gasps rippling, as Elena's voice cut through the shock, calm but commanding. "Good morning. I believe you were about to give my company to a murderer." She placed a thick envelope on the table, her gaze sweeping the room, lingering on Julian's terror-stricken eyes, then Sophia's pale face before addressing the board with unshakable authority. "Inside, you'll find proof of attempted murder, fraud, and conspiracy orchestrated by Julian Crane and Sophia Lane." Clara opened the envelope, her expression grim as she distributed documents, bank transfers, forged trust amendments, a private investigator's report detailing their plot. Julian stammered, "This is impossible. She's dead." But Eleanor's eyes pierced him, her voice icy. "You thought you could kill me, take everything. You forgot I'm a Harper." The board erupted in murmurs, Clara's voice rising. "I move to suspend the vote and investigate these claims," seconded by another member, the motion passing unanimously. Security entered, their leader stating, "Mr. Crane, come with us." And Julian, his empire crumbling, was led away in handcuffs, his pleas ignored. Sophia fled the room, her heels clicking frantically, but Elena's focus remained on the board, her leadership reclaiming the space Julian had tainted. Hours later, at the Harper mansion, Eleanor stood in her reclaimed home, the staff's quiet loyalty a balm to her wounds, Thomas the butler offering a warm nod as she entered her mother's old study. She dialed a private number, arranging for Sophia's final exit. Her belongings boxed, a note left. "Leave now, no cameras, just go." That evening Sophia arrived, her defiance crumbling as she found the barren bedroom, Logan blocking the door, his voice firm. "Your car's waiting. 10 minutes." Sophia's protests died under the weight of her defeat, and as her car vanished down the driveway, the mansion's lights dimmed, erasing her presence. 3 months later, Eleanor stood at the harbor, the Aurora's promise docked behind her, no longer a symbol of betrayal, but of triumph, her newborn daughter, Lily, cradled in her arms, her dark hair tousled by the sea breeze. Headlines had screamed of Julian's arrest, his 18-year sentence for attempted murder and fraud, while Sophia vanished, her name a footnote in the scandal. Harper Realty's stock soared under Elena's leadership, her integrity restoring the empire her grandfather built. In the boardroom, she'd addressed her team, her voice resonant. "This company stands for survival, for truth. No one steals our crown." The applause had been deafening, Clara wiping a tear, Marcus nodding proudly. Now in the nursery, Eleanor rocked Lily, the room soft with pinks and whites, a photo of her mother beside the crib. "I thought I lost everything," she whispered, her eyes glistening. But you showed me I'm unbreakable. The ocean sparkled outside, its waves a song of resilience, and Elena smiled, her heart full, her legacy secure, the storm past, the crown hers.